Hi, ladies. How you doing? Um, we're not live yet, correct, gentlemen? All right. Hello, 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 hello. Woo! Hello, Black Women's Roundtable. Ooh, y'all got me fired up and ready to go. Hi out there. Thank you, thank you, thank you for showing back up one more time today. It has truly been an awesome day. This is our 11th annual Black Women's Roundtable Women of Power National Summit. Our theme is Rebuild Hope. Can I say that? Can we say rebuild hope? Rebuild hope. Achieve justice, equity, and equality. So part of that is to also bring today, how was today for everybody? On, showed up. We showed up. Sisters showed up. Black women and allies showed up. Our Jewish sisters, our Latina sisters, some of the righteous brothers showed up today. Our Caucasian sisters and brothers showed up today. Why? What were we there for? What of our main goals? We were there for who? Brown, Jackson. What do we want? Confirm. Sanji, Brown, Jackson. What else are we there for today? Voting what? Voting rights and economic Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. We're not going to let you sleep on our voting rights. And we demand economic justice. So part of that is coalition building. Part of that is building those allies. Part of that, I'm blessed and challenged at the same time. I'm blessed to have two titles in my job with one paycheck is the problem. But I have two jobs, one paycheck. Where's the equity and equality? I digress. Right? But coalition, unity without uniformity, being able to be in coalition, being able to know who you're getting a foxhole with, being with a black person. On the street in New Orleans, Louisiana. He is still on the street in New Orleans, Louisiana. He is still seen as their mayor in New Orleans. And if I was also when I go there, I'm like, yeah, that's my brother, because in New Orleans they don't play that. Who your people? Tell him, Mark Morial, you in good shape. But and I mean that with all my heart. So Mark had a little time to be able to come because he's really traveling, but he wanted to come here. This idea, Deborah, to have this summit came from a conversation I had with that brother who said, hey, you know, y'all doing all this work with Black Women's Roundtable. Y'all need to show up in D.C. 11 years ago. And so it's like, yeah. And so we said, well, we'll do it one time. And we had been having all these regionals and everything. And here we are 11 years later. And so for him to come today, I really, really appreciate it. And I needed y'all to show our brothers some love, not just for that, but what he does each and every day. Because, look, Mark could be there because I'm in the rooms. And I'm representing you in those rooms as best I can. But I've seen him with corporate America, labor, wherever he goes, with the brothers and sisters on the street corner. He's the same brother all through that. And I appreciate that. So we're going to have a conversation. He put out a book. Hopefully those who got here early was able to get a copy. And he's going to sign them when this is over. So we're going to have a fireside chat. But I've been chatting so much, I asked a sister. Over to my sister, D. Marshall. We're going to pass you all this. Where's she working? And my brother from another mother, Mark Morial.
Give it up for Melanie Campbell. Give it up for Melanie Campbell. All right, everybody. Well, good evening. Hey, y'all. Y'all ready? Listen, a round of applause for the one and only President and CEO of the National Urban League. He is an American political leader, civil rights leader, New Orleans, a former mayor, New Orleans, the youngest mayor. In fact, a round of applause, stand to your feet for none other than Mark Morial. Round of applause for Mark Morial. Round of applause for the Mark Morial, author of the Gumbo Coalition.
All right, D. Marshall.
I'm excited for this. Y'all ready? Because you know what Mark said? He loves us so much. He is really about leadership, the community, women, and coalition building. And you know what he said, Melanie? I said, well, we're going to have this conversation, take a few questions, and then we'll be good. And you know what he said? This is Mark. He said, no, I got time. He said, whatever they want to talk about, we're going to talk about it. Yes, Deb Scott. And so we thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, we thank you for being a great leader. We thank you for being a generous leader. And we thank you for being a consistent leader. Yeah, it's consistent. And so let's first start with, it's Women's History Month. And what we know about you is you are a real champion of women, and you are a champion and a leader of, you know, how it is that we build. And so I want to just start there before we get to the book and the blueprint. So can we talk about women and Women's History Month and what's happening right now?
Of course.
Yeah.
So, you know, first thing I really want to do is thank you, D. Marshall. Give it up for D. Marshall. But I want to really, really salute my sister, my friend, my compatriot, my soldier in the struggle, my lifelong friend, Melanie Campbell. We are absolutely, stand up, give it up for Melanie Campbell.
That's right.
Give it on up.
That's right.
Because this sister and I go all the way back to when we were just young firebrands, troublemakers. We didn't know what making good trouble was, but we were making good trouble. But we go back a long way, and I'm so proud to be with her tonight and to see how this convening of powerful, beautiful, thoughtful, passionate, and purposeful Black women is. And Melanie, you have taken this convening and really, really put it on steroids and put it on fire. And I really appreciate that today. I also have to just acknowledge in the audience two sisters who work alongside of me at the National Urban League Washington Bureau. Tony Wiley, stand up Tony. Tony Wiley, who is our advocacy director, and Niambi Tomlinson, who works in our media relations operation. And we'll have some other friends here. And I also want to acknowledge the other brother in the house, George Lambert, the president of the Greater Metropolitan Washington Urban League. Melanie said, I got a quote on the brothers tonight, because this is a sister's conversation, but I want to start here. My mother will make 90 this year. I am so blessed to have her in my life. She, for me, has been my mother and my friend. And my advisor, and when anybody wants to check me, that's what they call. They call my mother if they need to check me. But the reason why I wanted to start with my mother is because my mother is a phenomenal woman. She is a woman who has had an incredible career as a teacher. She started as a second grade teacher. But even before that, she was a classmate of Martin Luther King at Boston University, 1952, 1953, 1954. So we knew Martin Luther King from the time we could literally speak through the stories that my mother would tell about Martin Luther King. And my mother and father were married and born as a part of the civil rights movement, because 2 weeks after the May 17, 1954 decision of Brown versus the Board of Education in Topeka, Kansas, my mother and father met at a party in New Orleans. And my father at that time had just finished law school as the first African-American graduate of LSU Law School. My mother was just home for the summer as she was pursuing her master's degree at Boston University. She had started at Xavier and then went to Boston to get her master's degree. And as she says, the discussion at the party turned into a discussion of Brown. And my father presented himself as the authority on Brown. And they talked at that party, and then they went out the following night. And after that, they were never separated from that moment. And they bonded over the pursuit of civil rights. My father told my mother said, and he had his own motives, he said, I have to go back to school at Boston University. My father said, well, you should stay here and pursue your master's degree here. And she said, well, where am I gonna go? He says, well, you should go over to Tulane and present yourself as a student. Now, at that time, Tulane was still a segregated institution. And my mother went over there and she presented herself, and they told her, Miss Hydell, that was her name, we cannot admit you to this school. My mother said, but how about Brown versus the Board of Education? And they said to her, well, we still have state law. I'm sorry, we'd like to admit you. But here's the story about my mother. My mother was an incredible as a homemaker. She was a civil rights activist in her own right. She was a second grade teacher, a university administrator, raised 5 children, juggled 55 balls at one time, and it is my mother who taught me how to love and respect women. Because I watched her, and then she became the quintessential role model. She was smart, she was beautiful, she was purposeful, she took no stuff, and she could seemingly do an endless number of things at one time. And so when you have a mother like that, it emanates throughout your entire ecosystem and your entire life. And I just wanted to start with that because I'm so honored to be here tonight, to be with all of you, and I want to celebrate all of you, your accomplishments, your struggles, your joy, and your pain, and what we are all working on today, which is to bring about truly transformative change.
That was so rich. I don't even know. Well, you know what? That was so rich. It explains everything, or it explains a lot in terms of just you had no choice but to be who you are and to do what you do for us and for our people because of your mom and your dad and your beloved mother. So we thank you for that. All right. So we're here to talk about your book, which I think a lot of it is here. A lot of, what you had gleaned, of course, from your mother and your father. But you wrote this book, the Gumbo Coalition, 10 Leadership Lessons. And I really want to start with, the inspiration to finally download, all that you do and all that you learn and all that you share in your mentoring and in your teaching others how to build coalitions. I just really want to start.
So I'll tell you the story, and I long wanted to write a book. About 15 years ago, I started with an outline and an agent, and got stuck because I was so busy with so many things. My younger children, Katrina occurred, and it was just so many things that I just dropped the project, didn't pursue it. Then about 3-4 years ago, I was at the Essence Festival. And I met a sister by the name of Lavelle Levette, who was a publisher with HarperCollins. And so we met in a social gathering, and she said to me, just straight up, why haven't you written a book? And I said, that's something I'd really like to do. And she said, I can help you. And you meet a lot of people in social environments. I think I can help you. I said, okay, let's exchange information. So following morning, I got a text from her. She said, do you have time to meet? She tells me who she is, gives me a little background information. Meet, have a cup of coffee, which we did at the Roosevelt Hotel in New Orleans. And that led to this journey with this book. She recommended to me to think about writing a book on leadership. Think about writing a book where you can share what has impacted and influenced you with others. And so this book is really about paying it forward. This book is about, I am a product of the many, 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 many people who lifted me, pushed me, who I observed throughout my entire life. I'm the product of that. They helped make me what I am and who I've become. And so this book is really about everyone else. To take these lessons, to look at what I learned, where I failed, what didn't work, what did work, and hopefully utilize it in their own life. And that is why I decided to write this book, because my life's journey is interesting. So I grew up the child of civil rights, passionate civil rights warriors, right? My father was a local lawyer for the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, worked with AP2, Rokani, Motley, Bob Carter on all of the desegregation cases in the late 50s and the 1960s in Louisiana. He later became president of the NAACP branch in New Orleans. At the same time, Medgar Evers and Bernard Jordan and all of the greats were leading field offices, local chapters, and the like. Grew up in that environment, right? And my mom was a school teacher, a second grade school teacher, teaching second grade in the Desire Public Housing Development in New Orleans, where she taught for 15 years, and was active in voter registration activities. She and her friends tried to join the League of Women Voters in New Orleans in 1963, 64. They were unable to join, and so they started their own voter registration organization called the Louisiana League of Good Government. All these black women who at the time were in their 20s and 30s, they said, we'll do our own damn thing. And that's indeed what they did. So this is the environment I grew up in, being sometimes dragged to a voter registration rally, dragged to an NAACP meeting, dragged to a rally at Reverend Davis's church, dragged up. I'm like, I don't want to go to none of these places. I'm 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. I want to be with my friends. I want to go play football. I want to go do what I want to do. But I was dragged along because that was called child care, right? Child care was you coming with me, right? We ain't got no babysitter. We don't have anybody. Or you go by your grandmother's house, right? That's the choice you have. But by the way, you're coming with us today. So I saw a lot. And I think when I was seeing it when I was younger, I didn't know what I was seeing. And at some point, it clicked, right? The significance of it, the magnitude of it, what people would do. Because I go to these NAACP meetings and it made me sit over on the side and I'm thinking, man, these people in here, why are all these people arguing so passionately, right? They are like fussing and arguing, and at the time I'm like, I wonder what they were arguing about, right? But it had an impact because the dot connected later on. And so I tell parents, young people, anyone raising parents, grandchildren, expose your children. Expose them to the real world. Expose them to reality. Expose them to community activities. Expose them to the news. I grew up on the coffee room table at my grandmother's house was Jet magazine, Ebony magazine. My grandmother had every Jet back to 1959, 58, 57, 56 in a big old box. And reading Jet magazine and reading Ebony magazine was how I learned about so many of the personalities and our heroes in Black history. And that, at that time, were those days' events. That's now today's history. And so that exposure was a part, it was a part of me. It wasn't the totality of me, but it was a part of me in terms of how I grew up. So sometimes when young people grow up in that environment, one or two things can happen. They can deeply resent it, right? Because it feels like they're being pushed in a direction. Or they can greatly embrace it. And I think I greatly embraced it and understood that it was so impactful. My parents were integrationists. They'd gone to segregated schools. Everything they knew was segregation. Then they were frontline civil rights activists. So when the schools integrated, y'all going to the integrated schools. That's what we fought for. Now, I don't think they knew that that meant on day one getting called the N-word. I don't think that they knew that that meant that we were going to go in the classroom 3 black boys, and they were going to sit us in the back, right? I don't think they understood or bargained for the fact that that meant that we would be in a racial gauntlet for most of our school life. But in many respects, being in that environment strengthened you and toughened you because you knew who you were. And that was the import of the family life and the community life that I grew up in. It was so interesting, and I'll make this point. I grew up in this neighborhood here is called Pontchartrain Park, and it's all black. Then there's this ditch. Y'all from the South, y'all know where the ditch is. They got a ditch. And then on the other side, there's another neighborhood. It's all white. It's called Gentilly Woods. And the school we went to was over here. So every day we had to go through the ditch into the white neighborhood about 3 or 4 blocks to go to school. And that was the environment that we grew up in. So we were in the black neighborhood, and then we were over at this predominantly white school. Now over time, the school became more integrated, right? But when our first few years we were there, it was only a handful of African American students in the school. So the book kind of references and contextualizes that because we are where we grew up, we are the experiences we had.
So this is good. I want to connect the dots from, you're talking a lot about being a kid and what you, in the environment that you grew up in. And in the beginning of the book, you talk about the kid who became the mayor. And I know there are, because this is a conference of black women and girls, there's an entire contingent here of girls between 14 and 17, and before they have to leave. Can you just talk about and connect the dots to your environment and then your run as the youngest, right? The youngest mayor, New Orleans?
Yeah, I grew up in a family where my father was an elected politician. He was a state legislator, first black state legislator, first black judge. He became the first African-American mayor. Tragically, right after he left office, he passed very suddenly in 1989. I got my first taste of elected politics on my own accord when I ran to become a Jesse Jackson delegate to the Democratic Convention in 1984. And I got elected. I was a Jesse delegate in 84. I was a Jesse delegate in 1988. And that was my first real experience on my own. But I had grown up working in campaigns. I had grown up participating in things. I decided in 1990, this is true, I decided in 1990 to run for Congress. And the reason why I ran is that the seat, which was a majority black seat, a lot like the seat in Atlanta that had been held by Weish Fowler before John Lewis had it, had been a predominantly black seat for many, many years, represented by a white liberal congresswoman by the name of Lindy Boggs. And she decided to retire. So I had, while I was in law school, worked on Capitol Hill for Mickey Leland, worked on the Senate side for Senator Russell Long. I said, if I'm ever gonna be a congressperson, I gotta run now because the seat is open. And it was open for the first time in almost 50 years because she and her husband had held the seat between the two of them for almost 50 years, from the 40s until 1990. I ran that race, and 11 candidates. New Orleans has Louisiana has an open primary system with a runoff, made the runoff, and narrowly lost the race in 1990. I came back the following year and ran for an open seat in the Louisiana Senate, won decisively, and 3 years later, at 35 years of age, I decided I'm going to run for mayor of New Orleans. Now, at the time, I ran because I was outraged. New Orleans had almost 500 murders. The economy was in decline. I felt that the leadership of the city and the black leadership of the city, I'll call it the second generation of black leadership had failed the people. And I use the second generation because my father and his friends who were elected in the 70s were civil rights people before they were elected officials. Politics was a means to achieve equity and civil rights, not a position or a title or a job. And then we spawned, it appeared to be, people who seemed to be more interested in being quote unquote politicians. So I came sort of a bit of a third generation, but I was also a generation jumper. So I decided to run at the age of 35 in a very, very contested race where there are many major politicians, black and white, running for mayor of New Orleans. And I'll tell you, I was challenged repeatedly by, are you old enough to do this job? I was challenged repeatedly, are you ready to do this job?
So I'm going to jump in here. How many of you in the room have been challenged, or you're not old enough? Raise your hand. Look at this. And then with the mark, how about this? For women in the room, how many of you have been told, how many of you have heard, you're not ready because you're a woman? Look at that.
That feeling, you know, it's a feeling, right? Because it's a feeling of anger and outrage. Because it is a feeling that people are marginalizing you, diminishing you, and disrespecting the work you've done to become who you are, right? But then you gotta say, I have to channel this feeling in a constructive way. Channel it in a constructive way to achieve the ends and the objectives. So early on in the campaign, in those days in New Orleans, there literally were candidate forums and debates almost every night in front of audiences. You would go to different. I was challenged early on in one of the televised debates, and you know the moderator said, and you know Senator Morial, people say you're not ready, you're too young, you're inexperienced, and that your opponents have far more experience than you. To which I answered, they do have more experience than me. They are far more experienced than me. I said, let me tell you what they're experiencing. They're experiencing presiding over 500 murders each year. They're experiencing presiding over a playground system where every backboard is broken, every light is out, and there isn't a decent program. They're experiencing 27,000 abandoned houses. They're experiencing incompetence. And I said, and if you want something different, I'm your guy. If you want some experience, they're for you. And I basically just decided I had to take a perceived weakness and turn it into a strength. And it redefined the race because it was about a generation of failed leaders. And this is playing out within the community, but it's also playing out within the black community, right? Whether I'm dealing with much more established politicians, and then I'm out there. And I also, you know, decided that I was gonna do something. I felt like to win, I had to get extraordinary turnout. And I had to get extraordinary turnout among young people, right? And so we set about to elevate participation and make the entire election became generational. So when I finally got elected, we won. Half of the new members of the city council were under 40. I was under 40. We really ushered in a new generation. And that sense, what I say to people is, one of the challenges you have in life, and one of the challenges we particularly have as black people, or people who feel marginalized, is how to channel your anger. how to channel that feeling, how to channel that outrage, how to not allow it to eat you and destroy you and diminish you and marginalize you, but to channel it into an energy to become constructive. And I worked very hard at doing that, you know. And when people said, you can't do it, you're going to fail, a lot of times I would say, I'm about to show you something. And I wouldn't always say it out loud. I said, you know what, I'm just going to go handle this. And sometimes you have to do that, and that's one of the lessons that I share.
This is good. This is a master class already. Yes? Yes or yes? Is this a master class already? Yes or yes? When he said you're too young, you are not ready, you don't have experience, you're not qualified, they have more experience than you. Who does that sound like? That sounds like exactly Jeff Scott. So, all right, so let's go to the leadership lessons in the book. Everybody, the book is called The Gumbo Coalition. Released at the very beginning of the pandemic. If you were the first in the room, the first 100, you received a copy. And so I want to talk about, you have, in the book, there are 3 key leadership lessons. I'm not going to share them all. We can read the book. In fact, I feel like there's a book club happening post the conference. Say yes or yes. Say amen, somebody. All right, so we're going to go to school. But you mentioned, here's one that I wanted you to, I would love for you to elaborate on. With one, let's see, a leader understands the value of building buildings. The rapid method you talk about in your book. And I want to go to the book. Let's see, who's reading along with me? I see you right here, sis. What page are you on? Oh, you're in the intro. You're in the intro session. The leader is about building senses and building relationships. Can you talk a little bit about relationships and how and why it is so important to build relationships?
You know, people make the world go round. Humanity is the sauce, the spice, and the energy of life, period. People make the world go round. But what I talk about in the book about networking and relationships is understanding different kinds of relationships. Everybody's not your best friend. Everybody's not your confidant. But you also cannot frame it that if they're not my best friend, they're my frenemy or enemy. Where I simply kind of have a two-dimensional portfolio of friends. Either you're like tight with me, or you're my enemy or frenemy. And I talk about different kinds of relationships. Most of us have limited capacity to have many intimate friends. Because to have an intimate friend or someone you're close to requires you giving and taking emotionally, keeping confidences, speaking to people frequently, and we all have best friends. Some people it may be 1 or 2, some may have the capacity to have 6, 8, or 10. A rare person can have more than that. And that's a very important kind of relationship, because that relationship sustains you, picks you up. They know things about you nobody else knows. They know things about you you're not going to share with anybody else. And you know things about them on the same level. That's an important relationship. But then there's a next layer of relationships. Those are sort of what I call business friends and relationships, right? Those are people with whom you might interact, work on projects with, be in an organization with, and there's a camaraderie amongst them. But you may not know a whole lot about them personally. You may have never been to their home. You don't know anything about their family life. You might know something, but the nature of the relationship is we work together. We're in an organization together. We're in a church together. We're on the job together. And we interact, and there's a basic bond of some trust and a basic bond of respect that goes along with it. And that's an important second set of relationships. Then there's a third set that I call associates. And those are people you might not deal with, but you see, you greet, you are aware of, you have goodwill towards. We have to understand that truly mining relationships, which are important, requires to understand the multidimensionality of having mature, respectful relationships, right? And in the book, I use a number of examples of people that I know who I've observed in terms of how they mine their relationships, because it's so crucial to getting things done. This is a relationship building conference, right? You're gonna, number one, connect with some people you know that maybe you haven't seen in a while. You're gonna meet some new folks that you may keep up with. You may meet some folks you're not necessarily gonna keep up with, but if you see them somewhere, you're gonna say, hey, what's up, what's up, what's up, how you doing? We have different types, and we have to understand the different types of relationships, and that bringing a person into your inner sanctum has to be a decision of consciousness and of choice, because we get mostly burned where we think I'm that close to somebody, and I'm really not, because in my mind I might think I'm that close to them. In their mind, they don't think they are. So in business, in politics, in life, you never know how these relationships come back around, right? And how they can help you and they can hurt you. So in the book, I talk about thinking about relationships in a more sophisticated way. And it's about knowing people, but it's also about understanding the value proposition of different relationships, right? Some people will say, well, I don't need no friends, right? And you don't need no friends till you need some friends, right? Or you don't need no friends till you walk in and you're like, I've been hating on that person, damn it, I got to interview with them for this next job, right?
Say ouch or ouch to somebody.
And that whole circle is a fascinating circle that you have to be aware of if you're interested in advancing yourself, right? Or sometimes your relationships are not for you. They're for your friends and loved ones, right? You want to help somebody says, I'm trying to do something. Oh, I can call over there and introduce you to someone. I can call over there and put a good word in. I can call over there and let me just find out something. So understand that also sometimes a relationship is not about being self-centered. It's about the value proposition to help those I love, I care for, or I want to advance or help. They can be children, nieces, nephews, neighbors, friends, church members. It could be anyone in any way. So the value of people, and I'll just make this point because this is important. One of the fundamentals to me about leading is loving people. You gotta love people.
Ooh, say that again, that's good.
Now, you can love them and not like their ways. But loving people is about having a fundamental respect for who they are and for the contributions that they make. And I think that's a fundamental feature of any type of leadership. Right? If you're not respectful or you don't care and love people and what happens to them and what their outcomes, you have trouble being a leader, an effective leader.
Wow, that's good. That's good for all of the, right? A room full of coalition builders, you just have to love people. That's leadership 101, loving the people. Here's another in the book. Of course, we're talking about the Gumbo Coalition 10 leadership lessons. And so we talked about people, now let's go to plan. In your book, you use these quotes, which I love. A wise man changes, a fool never does. But this lesson says a leader recognizes when to modify the plan. And because we are in a season of needing to revisit and reevaluate our plans and not being stuck, to the plan. Can you just talk about that lesson?
You can't modify a plan if you ain't got no plan. So it starts with thinking in terms of planning. Like, for example, you're going to plan your day. You're going to decide, and there are many dynamics and elements of planning your day as a person. What time you're going to rise. After you rise, what is your routine and what are you going to do? How are you going to prepare yourself for the day? Whether it's preparation of food, preparation of things you wear, preparation of your personal self to present yourself. You are going to have a plan about how to get from point A, which may be your home, to point B, where you're going to work. You have a plan. I have to leave at a particular time to catch a bus or a train or to get in my car. I plan a route, right? Which way am I going to go? We're subconsciously planning all the time. Then we're planning, maybe we plan our work day. Maybe it's as simple as, I know I'm going to take a break at 10, or I never take a break at 10. Or I'm going to take a break at noon, or some people say I never take a break at noon. Or I tend to want to leave at 2:30, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or I'm leaving when I have to. We have plans. So in business and organizational behavior, having a plan is essential to success. And it means consciously thinking. So in an organizational setting, Melanie developed a plan for this conference. There was a budget, there was logistics, there was a hotel, there was a decision on programming and who would speak. It was a plan. The plan may have started with Melanie's vision, but the development of the plan probably included a whole lot of other people, right? People who make recommendations, people who produce, people who do X, people who do Y. She had a plan. Now, knowing when to modify a plan is essential. So suppose, I'll use this as a real example. I was coming down here and there was an accident on the highway so bad, and I said, Melanie, I can't come. Melanie would have to decide, do I cancel? Do I try to very quickly identify an alternative program, content, speaker, discussion to be able to respond? The issue is knowing sometimes when to modify and how to modify, and when you modify, you're just developing an alternative plan. I'm a big believer in planning and in thinking through things and having a meeting of the minds of the people involved before you do something, and then being always conscious of maybe the need to modify, right? Versus what I call just rolling. Now sometimes you do have to just roll, but chaos, confusion, and conflict, and backbiting, and fighting comes when you don't have a plan. The key to a plan is not just what's on paper, it's that we have a meeting of the minds. Melanie, I'm going to do this. And Melanie says, hey, you're going to do this, and we all have a role. Now, everybody know what we got to do now. Okay, everybody know the time frame here. That's a plan, right? Everybody's got a role, everybody's got an understanding. Melanie says, look, this is the amount of money we got to raise. This is what we got to raise it. Okay, that's part of a plan. Here's when we have to sign the hotel contract. That's part of a plan. You have a plan, a framework for carrying out. In this instance, I'm using the event as an example. I developed a plan at the beginning of my administration as mayor to tackle the public safety problems, the crime problem, the violence problem we had. And I needed a plan because I wanted to do a number of things simultaneously. This happened earlier today. I needed to confront the fact that there were killings taking place in New Orleans public housing developments, sometimes 10, 15, 20 a month in each of our big public housing developments. What was true was there wasn't no police nowhere in the public housing development. Not before someone got shot, nor after they got shot. The other thing is, there were no programs for young people. So I said to the community, we got to do two things. We have to redeploy our police, and we have to invest in young people. And at that time, and you see this occurring somewhat today, you had this debate going on. Well, you know, should you do more social programs, or should you do policing and law enforcement? And I basically took the position, I got to do a little of everything here. I can't fall into this ideological trap. So I hired a police superintendent from right here in Washington, the late Richard Pennington. He had been the commander in Anacostia. I brought him to New Orleans. First week he said, you got a problem. You ain't got no police in public housing. You ain't gonna stop one murder. He says, can I get some apartments in public housing? I'm gonna open police substations. But he said something really, he says, this is how I'm gonna staff it. I'm gonna get the guys on the force who grew up in that neighborhood. I'm gonna put them in that neighborhood. And that's gonna be my criteria for staffing. So that I'm gonna put folks in there that know the people in that community. We did that. Then we went and put 5,000 young people to work during the summer. Then we put 40,000 kids in summer camps between the ages of 7 and 14. And I invested all this money, and I tell people all the time, I say, where'd you get the money? I took it from the police overtime budget. Because they hadn't spent their overtime budget in 2 years. And so I said, I'm gonna fund it here now. But then I went back later and put more money in policing after I cleaned up the mess and cleaned up the corruption and cleaned up the brutality. So the point was we had a plan, and I sold the community on the plan, but I told, I'm doing a lot of stuff here. I'm doing jobs, I'm doing camps, I'm gonna put officers in public housing, I'm gonna get the preachers involved, I'm gonna get the community leaders involved. This is gonna be much different than anything else you all have ever seen, and it worked. We brought the murder rate down by some 65%. We put all these young people to work. We had all these camps. It wasn't complex. It just required will. And it required, but we had a plan to do it. And the way the plan was developed, and this is true, the first 3 weeks of my administration, I had a leadership team of about 15 people. And you know what time we would meet every day? 9 p.m. at night. We met at 9 p.m. at night. So everybody had to go do what they had to do. Then we had to go do our community activities, because this is politics. And we meet at 9 o'clock at night. I'd send out to Alexis Fried Chicken down the street. Y'all got some food back there. And we'd sit there usually from 9 to midnight. And we spent about 10 days mapping the entire plan out. Then when I had the plan completely mapped out, I called a special session of the New Orleans City Council and laid the plan out on the community, right? So we were in an emergency situation. What compelled this is that I took office a week before Mother's Day. On Mother's Day in 1994, a young 10-year-old boy by the name of James Darby got shot in the head, getting caught in a crossfire inside of public housing. Now, Darby, this boy had just been written up in a newspaper. Guess what he had been written up in a newspaper for? He had written a letter to President Clinton asking him to stop the killing. And he gets shot. This is my first week in office. And I remember when the call came in, I remember thinking to myself, this is, I remember thinking, now it's on you. You have got to go do something. And I tell you, I think I went, and I think that after that evening, it was a Sunday evening, I think I just prayed and prayed and prayed. And I woke up the next morning. I called my top staff people. I said, I want everybody in here 9 o'clock tonight. 9 o'clock tonight. I said, we're going to put together a plan. We're going to confront this. We're going to fight this. This is a tragedy that's going to get this community, excuse me, ladies, off their ass, right? And be prepared to do something different. And I said, some people are going to be completely shook up when we do this, because I took 200 police officers. We had police officers working in the courts. We had police officers sitting behind desks. Took them and put them all out on the street. Just like that. Put them out on the street. Y'all got to go out here and work. Y'all have to go out here and patrol, because we had a situation where we didn't have communities where they had too many police. We had neighborhoods where you never saw the police. Call up 911. You still never saw the police, right? And that's not fair to taxpayers and black taxpayers. In a lot of communities, that's how black people got treated. And in New Orleans, everything had fallen apart in 1992 and 1993, and I got elected, we have to fix it. But the plan is the key. The meeting of the minds is the key. The salesmanship to the constituency is the key. And then modification, if you run into something, you always have to be willing to modify and change. And that sometimes requires judgment that is not easy.
Yeah, so we're going to open up for questions in a second, but a real practical question for all of the affiliates and the leaders in the room. How much time should be invested annually for planning? And who, in addition to staff and team, should be in the meetings?
So I think that every organization should have an annual plan. An annual plan. And it should have goals, even if it could be 3 pages long. It should have goals, it should have a calendar, it should have outcomes. I think that it's typically a combination of, depending on the type of organization, it's staff level. Sometimes if it's a volunteer-driven organization, it may be volunteers. If it's more structured, it may be a plan you put together and present to a board for approval. But then every month or so, or even more frequently, you're evaluating the plan. How are we doing? We making a mark? Do we need to change things? Things happen. Let me tell you, I had an annual plan in 2020 at the National Urban League, and COVID happened.
That's page 169. Mark, it's page 169. A leader must seek new ways to solve old problems. You have to seek a new way?
All of a sudden, yes, COVID happens. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? So, much to the credit of the Urban League, we had local leaders who were very seasoned and very savvy and had been through the recession, had been through local crisis, who instinctively understood how to respond. So many of them began feeding people. Many of them began helping people who were laid off apply for benefits or to look for new work. And at the national level, we decided we would have to raise resources and try to support COVID-related activities, right? We had to pivot, and then we had to go into overdrive on advocacy. There needs to be a COVID relief bill, and the money needs to come to the community, and the money needs to be put in people's hands. So we went into overdrive on our public advocacy, and we began working with Karen Bass, who was chair of the Charles Schumer. This is when Trump was in office, right? We began to work very closely with them on what we thought the community needed. So COVID was an altering event, and I'm proud that the Urban League movement never closed down, never missed a beat, and shifted its work to serve people and the stress that they face and the difficulties that they faced. So, you know, on a plan, I'd say, hey, you know, everybody needs a plan. Every organization needs a plan. And sometimes you already have it and don't realize you have it. But you need to say, I have a plan we put together for the national urban. We got 125 metrics. Everybody who works with me has to come and tell me what their plan for the year is. I need to know, and at the end of the year, I'm going to go look, and I'm going to see if the plan has been met. And sometimes people exceed, sometimes people don't meet it, but it may be circumstances beyond their control, right? So I say to people, look, you put a plan together. Don't game the plan because you want to meet every goal. You need to be appropriately ambitious without being ridiculous, because you're never going to make 100%, right? Rarely will you make 100% because we can't control all of the circumstances around us. Like we had our plan this year has passing these voting rights bills. Well, it doesn't appear so that's going to happen. But it's not because we didn't put the effort in. It's not because we didn't try. But it is. But once again, it just gives you the importance of being ambitious and having vision. You need a plan. I want to use this example. If you give me the best 10 musicians on this side and equally good 10 musicians on this side, and I said, we're going to have a concert. Y'all can't rehearse, can't put no plan together. I just want you to get up here and just play. Y'all 10, I'm going to give you an hour to go over there. You can rehearse, come up with a little series of songs or plan, and put both on the stage. Who do you think's going to do better? The group that play. Now, this group probably could sound okay because they're that talented. But that's the value part. No matter how good you are, you're going to be better if you got a plan.
And there it is. Round of applause. Mark Morial just gave us 10 leadership lessons from the Gumbo Coalition. We talked about a leader builds networks with intention, page 135, if you have the book. A leader is not paralyzed by the unexpected, that was COVID, page 101. And then he gave us not only that, but a leader fights through disappointments to achieve victory. We are so grateful for this masterclass with none other than Mark Morial. Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you.
We appreciate you. Round of applause. Can we all stand up as we close out, and we're going to invite Melanie to come up as we are moving along in the program. No, you can do better than that. A round of applause for the masterclass. And so what we're going to do, we're going to ask everybody to pause for a second. Don't leave, because y'all missed the giveaways. Y'all see, listen, when leadership and legacy is in the room, you never want to lose. You never know what's going to happen. Okay. So there will be a signing for those who have the books. We're going to do that off to the right. And then we will have, I think I'm going to hand this over to you, Melanie, and you'll give us our charge for the remainder of the evening. So round of applause for President and CEO Melanie Campbell.
Can we give these two masters, this two masters, but I know we got an early start in the morning. So, D. Marshall. Awesome. I know I got, so we'll have you all step over, and is there a seat, chair? Okay. Oh, is it outside the door? Where is Anthony? So, y'all all right? Yeah. So I think I have some housekeeping things to share, but let's close out. Thank you all who are watching out there, those who are online. Wave at y'all. right? And thank y'all again for coming out to this fireside chat. I think that you see why we invited this brother, along with a couple other righteous brothers. This is the first time we've actually had brothers come. Since 11 years. But other than come eat at lunchtime. But we thought this would be good. So for those of you all who have books, Mark will be there. He'll sign those books. And look, it's a very reasonable price. If you missed the complimentary ones, I think I would say it's worth your money. But there's a couple. Come on, Q. There's a couple of housekeeping things that y'all could before you leave. The girls who are on the girls track, I know you have that information. Okay, and you have some logistics about that.
Good morning, or good evening. So your COVID testing is in the same room, and that will be ready and open for you at 6:30 in the morning. And tomorrow morning we have a workout for you, and that'll be in Riverview 5, and that will be at 7:30. So I just want to make sure you get your COVID test, and then you come over for the workout, and breakfast will be ready again here in the foyer. From 7:30 to 9, and the first plenary starts at 9 a.m. and registration will be open at 8, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. And Q. And for the, there's a mixer tonight, right? For the girls, girl power track, it's going to be now, right? 8 to 10, Eastern Shore, which is when you go out. It's to the main hotel. It's right there to the left. It's Eastern Shore 1 by the marketplace. So it's still early. Have a good night. Thank you again. We'll see you early in the morning. Thank you, ladies. Have a good night.